Do you believe in soulmates?
I think we all have a ton of soulmates.
How many soulmates?
For you, like 4,
How many do you have?
like 1,200.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Backlog Banter movie review. My name is Tucker Hazel, and I'm joined by my really smooth co-host, Tanner Dykstra. And today, we're going to talk about the hotness out of South by Southwest, which is Cha-Cha Real Smooth, Cooper Raif's new film. We just saw it in theaters, and we're here to give our thoughts. But if you want to talk to us about this film or any of the other many films that are releasing around this time period, it's a busy summer. You can leave a comment in this description, and while you're also down there, you can join our Discord. There's a link there as well. And you can subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, give it a like. All those things make me incredibly happy. But Tanner, Cha-Cha Real Smooth is a very popular movie. People are singing its praises. Cooper Raif is Hollywood's it guy. Maybe. But what are your thoughts on Cha-Cha Real Smooth?
Tucker, my thoughts on Cha-Cha Real Smooth are numerous. They are multifaceted, but I will try to keep it condensed for the purposes of this review. I think that Cha-Cha Real Smooth is the bones, the foundation of what could have been a really, really good movie. But to me, we watched Cooper Raif's directorial and writing and acting debut, Shithouse, and to me this doesn't feel like much of an improvement. In a lot of ways, it kind of feels like a step backwards, because I think this ideal as him as this Hollywood wonder boy is maybe what caused him to write such a self-aggrandizing and in many ways what I felt suffocating film.
Sure.
This film is very suffocating in its quirkiness and goofiness, and what we're going to really be talking about here is Cooper Raif being a character who is almost entirely good and always morally correct, and everyone likes him and he likes everyone, and he's the number one party guy. He can always like smooth out a conversation or a situation and make everything go buttery smooth and okay.
Yeah.
I feel like that is an issue with the film, which we'll obviously get into more, but yeah, that's really what's sticking out in my mind at the moment.
Yeah, I think this is a good film. And I think that it's a very impressive film. My thesis is this. I think it is a surprisingly professional film. I think a lot of the elements of this film, and Cooper Raif's being like a very young writer, director, actor, I'm surprised by the quality of this. I feel like it's on the level, almost in a lot of respects, as something you would see of a similar budget, similar tone, similar style. It feels amateur in one major category, which for me is the dialogue and a couple of the characters. The dialogue and primarily Cooper Raif's main character, Andrew, are, I think you're right, suffocating in his positivity, in his moral goodness, and lacking in flaws makes it really hard for me to want to resonate with this character that I always feel like I'm looking for something more out of. I spent the entire runtime of this film being like, when is the other shoe going to drop? When am I going to learn why he's so overly positive, why he's maybe trying to hide something by putting forth constantly, I'm helping everyone, I'm putting everyone else before myself. But that other shoe never really drops. He's a good guy. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I think in a film that is as simple as this in terms of it just being a drama comedy, I feel like I was looking for something a little more serious to feel like this was a really interesting character to follow around.
Yeah, I mean, Cooper Raif writes and acts and directs himself as the least interesting main character of our leading group. Tucker, you're right in saying that he is essentially flawless. I mean, there are some faint whispers of like he has a drinking problem that we can interpret from the fact that he always has to like drink to become the perfect party starter and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's where I was thinking that some drama was going to come into this, that we were going to see that when he's not drunk, when he's not at one of these parties, that he's quite reserved and socially anxious and awkward. But he's not. I leaned over to you and I joked that it seems like there's a gas leak in every single scene just because everyone's like goofy and quirky and like trailing off in sentences, and like, well, a constant joke that this movie does is say a thing, I shouldn't have said that, that was stupid, why did I say that? They do that joke approximately half a dozen times across various different characters. And the moral of the story is that in your 20s, when you're young, you should put yourself first and, find your own path. But as we were discussing when we were walking out of the theater, what really changes? Does he learn that from beginning to end? What is he doing at the end of this film that he wasn't doing at the beginning of this film? What marked change is there? I just feel like there isn't really any.
Yeah, I think a lot of the stakes of this film come down to the internal minds of the characters. I do think he learned things. We watched him have conversations and come to realize things about himself. But in terms of actions, no, there's not a huge change from beginning to end. He's a good guy. He's helping out people. He's having fun with his friends. That happens at the beginning. It happens at the end. I think what is the most interesting aspect of this film is his relationship with both Domino and Lola. Domino portrayed by Dakota Johnson, who I think both of them are the highlights of this movie, pretty much bar none. I think the two of them are the most interesting characters. I think they're probably the ones whose performances I enjoyed the most. And having them to bounce off of makes him so much more interesting in their sequences. Unfortunately, there is like a good 20-30% of the movie that they are not in, and we're just watching him be with this family who is fine but not particularly interesting, or live his own life, which is probably the least interesting aspect of the film. But when we're cutting back to these bar mitzvahs and we're watching him be the party guy and give advice to people and build his relationship with Lola and Domino, I think that that's where the movie really shines. And it's also where the dialogue, I think, works its best, because Lola is a I believe the kids are middle schoolers, young girl who is autistic. And the relationship that she builds with the characters around her, primarily her mother and Andrew, is very believable. And I think she's a very well-written character. And I think when Andrew is trying to meet her on her level and use his I'm a good guy personality to help someone else out, especially with Lola, I think that's where the dialogue works its best, because it feels natural. But when we're pulled out of that situation and he's interacting with another adult or someone else his age, it feels like he's writing for laughs in most every scene. And that repetition of not letting most of the serious moments in the film breathe. And when I feel like there should be a serious moment, not going all the way with it, and outside of a few sequences, that's when I was like, okay, the dialogue needed another pass. There are numerous moments where I'm sitting there like, I can't believe they just actually wrote that. That feels like the first draft of a script, and you give that another pass, you clean up the dialogue, okay, maybe it's a little bit cringy, and then it really hits. But I was taken out of the moment numerous times throughout the film where I was about to, emotional moment. He said what? Why did he say that? Why are characters reacting this way? And that's just kind of the Chinese water torture of drip, drip, drip that I was feeling like, can't get fully invested in this scene. Oh, can't believe they said that.
Speaking of like the first draft nature of what this writing seems like, there is also issues of when the film does go dramatic, when it leans towards drama instead of comedy. It falls into the common dialogue trap of character A, or Domino, she is a complex, flawed character, and Andrew will say, here is your character flaw. I recognize this flaw within you.
Yeah.
It just blatantly throwing it out there, which maybe wouldn't be such an issue if the other 99% of the time he was a bumbling fool who didn't really know how to accurately and, maturely interact with other adults.
Yeah.
But talking about the comedy a little bit, I thought it hit. That's where a lot of my positivity comes on this. I think that this is for the most part, the comedy of this bumbling fool who happens to be a really fun party starter guy is a good comedic concept, and he interacts with these complex characters that have some things going on behind the scenes that he's not really aware of, but he sort of just stumbles into these things and stumbles into issues and tries to solve them himself, even though he's a 22-year-old with a 14-year-old's mentality, essentially. I think that comedic concept works most of the time. Not all the time. The jokes get stale, the jokes get old. I should also mention that this film is set in like 2021 or 2022 or whatever, and they let you know that with some modern references, some TikTok things, some name drops of people like Jake Paul. And honestly, this, more than maybe any other film in recent memory, does that the best. It doesn't hit all the time, but it feels the most natural, maybe because this is a very grounded in reality sort of film. Yeah. It's not a, I don't know, like a fucking Jumanji movie or whatever, where they say Jake Paul or something like that. These are, that you buy that these are real people in a real situation, and they talk about these things.
Yeah, I certainly didn't have a problem with those. I think that it being so modern and so modern because the creative voice is so young, that's where I feel the film is at its most distinct. And why I said this film feels surprisingly professional. I think it is a very well directed movie. I think all the actors do very well with what they're given. I think a lot of the characters are very interesting. It looks very good. It's very well shot. It's very well laid out, very well paced. I think that the really my only issue with this film is Cooper Rafe's character and the dialogue, as I said earlier, and those kind of just take me out. But on the whole, I do think this is a good film. I was invested in the conflict, harmed by the fact that I was waiting for there to be more conflict. I think lack of conflict, like explicit conflict and across the film stakes, is where I'm like, okay, I think this could have hit harder. There were numerous characters and relationships that I thought were going to set up something and we were going to learn something more about them that was going to come to a head, and then we're going to have our main character learn something about himself, learn how to act in a different way. And those moments, for the most part, never really came to fruition. And so while the film is very good in setting up things, I think there's maybe a lack of payoff or stakes that bring those setups to a more emotional head.
Yeah. I think a thesis statement that I had, Tucker, you gave your thesis statement at the beginning. I
And
think I
here's
just
yours.
formulated one in my head. Cooper Rafe made a movie about a side character in a main character story.
Sure.
He
Yeah.
made the side character, him, the main character in the story of Domino and Lola and Joseph, right?
Yes.
Joseph
Absolutely.
is the plot of a movie that we typically get. Speaking of Joseph, quick thing about him. So he's very much set up as this like borderline abusive and most of the time absent father figure. Then the movie decides that actually he's a good guy, even though
Yeah.
we never see him do any good deeds for his family or to anyone else, really. And the movie just tells us, oh, it's okay that, spoilers, Domino and Lola, like end up making a family with Joseph because he's a good guy, actually. But we never see that setup. It's not planted at all. That seed isn't planted at all. He just is suddenly a good guy because the movie requires him to be a good guy to end the movie.
Yeah, that's the conflict that I was talking about that I thought would lead somewhere. And having it not lead somewhere, I think leaves a little bit to be desired in terms of forcing Andrew into circumstances that make him act in a certain way or realize something about himself. I think you're right. I think that is actually the thesis statement of this film is I would love to watch a film about Dakota Johnson's character who has a lot of internal struggle, who is still trying to figure herself out at ages 35 or whatever she is.
She's first built in this movie too. Like she seems like
absolutely.
she should be the main character because she's Dakota Johnson and she's great.
Yeah. And then having a side character who is this nice guy who runs parties in the background and who's the babysitter for her autistic child. Sure. Yeah. I'd watch that, and I do think it would end up more compelling because I think putting the focus on the more interesting characters being Domino and Lola is where this film should have gone. But you can feel, hey, Cooper Rafe wants to be the Hollywood it guy. He is a writer, director, actor. And you know what? Good for him. He does a surprisingly good job. He's very young. I'm proud of you, buddy. You did you done good, and I think he's got a promising future ahead of him. But I can feel that this story had more intrigue if it wasn't told from a writer, director, actor who wanted to be the main character of the film and be in basically every sequence of the film. From that angle, I can feel, yeah, maybe a little bit amateurish, putting yourself first, frankly.
Yeah, I agree. He has the makings to be a good writer and director. He just hasn't wowed me yet.
Yeah.
But he's only like 2 years older than us, so hey, who's to say, really? Tucker, what would you give Cha Cha Real Smooth?
Cha Cha Real Smooth for me is going to be a 6 out of 10. On the whole, I do think this is a good movie. I think it works well in most regards, but I think it is really held back by a little bit of amateurish storytelling and writing that made it not hit home for me.
I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Like I said at the beginning, lots of people are liking this one. I can see why. For me, it's the foundations of a story that might have been much more interesting if built upon, with Andrew's character, giving us some more flaws and things like that, or flipping the dynamic and making Andrew a side character in the Domino and Lola movie.
Yes.
But regardless,
where's the Domino and Lola Amazon Prime spinoff?
Hey, we'll get Apple
or
TV
Apple
Plus.
TV Plus. My bad. Sorry, Apple. Sorry, Apple.
Don't apologize to them.
But does it for our Cha-Cha Real Smooth review. Thank you very much for watching. And everyone, you should stick around for all the other movie reviews we're going to be doing this summer because howdy, are there a lot of them. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the future.